The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show, the home of Googlization Nation, where we talk with HR and business thought leaders about the crazy shift going on in the world of business, technology, and HR. Here's your host, Ira Wolf, and co-host Keith Campagna.
Well, welcome back, everyone, Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization listeners, and all those who are members of Googlization Nation. The shift just continues to hit everyone's plans. That's sort of a rhetorical question, but a very real question. And it goes without saying that everyone here at Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization hope you, our listeners, your teams, your families are safe, staying healthy, and practicing good COVID-19 prevention. You know, I wrote my book, Recruiting in the Age of Googlization. The subtitle was, the original title was supposed to be When the Shift Hits Your Plan. We changed it. Now I'm having second thoughts that should have been the title a couple years later. But in the book, I actually pulled it out the other day. I was looking for a quote, and I found a lot of quotes in there, but one of them that struck me, even though I wrote it, was exponential change doesn't follow the rules of linear growth and history. And that sounded a bit academic. I've been talking about exponential change for a long time, but especially for the last 4 years since I did my TED Talk and wrote the book and everything. But, we always look for examples to explain what exponential growth was, what it looks like, and most importantly, not from a kind of an academic point, but what did it feel like? What would exponential change actually feel like? Because we can read about, how Uber and Lyft and Airbnb and Amazon, these were all events and we can see it happening in front of our eyes, but it took, decades behind the scenes and then, a couple years to unfold. But COVID-19 has brought this to life, which brought another statement that many of you have heard me say, and I've published it over and over again. I talk about it in every conference, every presentation I do, that the lines between science fiction and reality were blurring. Well, now they truly are blurring. I wrote that in 2017, and as I said, everything just seems to be coming to life. We're truly, our lives are so uncertain. We really don't know what's going to happen. The news just keeps coming at us. The one thing that we do know, and I do want to put a positive spin on this, and I've been spending a ton of time, a ton of hours over the last 2 to 3 weeks. I can tell you that I personally have been as busy as I've ever been, and not necessarily making money busy, but just trying to keep up with the news that I can share, trying for my own well-being to stay busy, but also to keep learning and figure out what's next. What's going to happen. And the one thing that is for certain, there's not a single person on the planet that doubts this, other than maybe a couple of people that are destined to make the apocalypse fulfilled. But most people are. This is an event. I mean, although it's certainly uncomfortable, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen on the other side. This is an event. I listened to somebody I quoted in my book, and I've had an opportunity to meet him and talk with him over the last couple days, or last week or so, was Daniel Burrus. He's been a futurist. He's been around for 35 years, very accurate. And he talks about the difference between soft trends and hard trends. And a soft trend is what we're experiencing now. It's a pandemic. And, even if it, obviously 18 months away is a long, long time, especially if we're still on lockdown and sheltered at home. But it's over. I mean, at that point, there's a vaccination, and like other diseases in the past, it'll go away and we'll get back to normal. And that's what we're here to talk about. I mean, we really want to talk about moving forward. How can Keith and I and our guests help you make sense of what's happening and where the future is going? Because the best cure for uncertainty is understanding and communication. So we're going to continue on that path. And that's why we're really happy today that Mike Smith is going to be our guest. Keith and I schedule these things out 8 to 12 weeks, sometimes even further. So when we scheduled this, we had no idea that COVID-19 be dominating our lives and disrupting our lives. So we were going to talk about how to find top talent. Because that was one of the number one things on a CEO's mind, and recruiter's mind and HR's mind, and Mike happens to be an expert at that. But here we are in the fourth straight week, COVID-19 abruptly disrupting our lives, and Mike also happens to be a student like myself of change and mindset. So what better topics to be talking about today than mindset and change? So stay tuned. We'll get to Mike very shortly. Keith, what's happening on your end of the world, or your end of the county, actually, I guess?
Yeah, right. To go back to what you were saying, right? Like I think what it feels like is something that, in a very trippy, twisted way, is something that, I've been talking about in front of groups for the last year and a half, and you are too, right? It's disruption. This is what disruption feels like. And part of my message to the CEO groups and the CFO groups and the HR groups has been, do your best to be the disruptor inside of your organization. Don't wait for something to come. And unfortunately, I think the entire world on a personal level has obviously been disrupted, on a business level has been disrupted. And for me, fortunately, I've been working from home for quite some time in the software world. So to see how this disruption is taking place and how it's really going to force some truly dynamic changes, my heart goes out to the hourly workers, to the individuals who, economically speaking, are going to have a very challenging next couple of weeks. It truly does. But I can't help but wonder, and I mean it in a positive way, about what's on the other side of this. Because now, you talk about those game changers like Tesla and Uber and Netflix and how they disrupted industries. But prior to this conversation, we talked about employee engagement. We talked about how businesses in general, not just HR leaders, but business leaders, needed to catch up with the idea that technology is the key to the future of work. And here everyone has been dispersed. Here we have this unbelievable drive to stay connected maybe as an organization, maybe as a team, maybe as a human family, to get through these challenging times. And technology is the key to all of this. And I'm like you, I'm working 10, 12-hour days. I got my kids at home, right? It's a crazy, crazy time. I'm having a lot of fun, but I could tell you, not everybody's having that much fun. A lot of the sales leaders I'm talking to, C-levels that I speak with, they're so unsure of what's to come. It's putting everybody in a relatively uncomfortable position. And so I think it's certainly therapeutic for me to be able to be on, have the podcast with you and still have these conversations with people like Mike. But it's really, I believe that, and it's such a mind trip for me, but this idea of life-work integration that I've been working on towards and building up is starting to become something that's more obviously needed. And that is to say that you have to move from a stress mindset to, how to manage stress, by using the right tools, by adapting to the situation that's in front of you, and keeping your calm. And that's way easier said than done. But I think it's people like Mike, and maybe now might be a good time to bring him on, but certainly Mike's going to be able to help explain what he's seeing and how he's been able to help people manage through this, not just now, but when change comes and stress happens, there are ways that you could rise above and get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're right. We're going to get Mike on just in a second, but we got a couple of housekeeping things to do right before. We've got to thank Zor.ai and Success Performance Solutions for being our sponsors again, for basically helping us be here every week. They help us make it possible. Also, the show is live. If you have any questions, you can call us, 561-623-9429. That's 561-623-9429. You can also go up to the W4CY.com website, and there's a chat there. You can submit some questions. I know we've been getting them fairly frequently, so if you have a question about what's next, the future of work, business. We're going to be talking a lot about that and how we need to reframe this whole conversation. And now is certainly the time to do it. If we're waiting for the all clear signal, it's going to be too late. You can also always send Keith or me a message on LinkedIn. We've got almost 1,000 people in Googleization Nation now. You can go to Googleizationnation.com. It's free. Sign up. You'll get updates about this and live streams that I've been doing. And I've got to get Keith on. I know that we were supposed to do it yesterday, but busyness just got in the way. And webinars and these podcasts, so you get updates about that. I've also started a Slack channel for people who want to do it on the fly. Everybody likes their news in different bits and pieces. So you can go to bit.ly. It's bit.ly/C, the letters CU on the flip side. CU on the flip side. And there is a flip side to this. And we're going to help you get there. And as I mentioned before, I've got my book, and I've extended the offer to order. You can get a copy for free. Second edition came out just in February, Recruiting in the Age of Googlization, edition 2.0. And you can I'll either send you a notice through the Googleizationnation.com, or if you put join.Googleizationnation.com into your browser, easy to order, and you immediately get a digital copy, and within 5 to 7 days, depending on the mail these days, 5 to 7 days or so, give us maybe 10, you'll get a hard copy. So let's go to really put things in perspective. We're talking about mindset. As you'll quickly find out, Mike Smith has a funny accent, and it's not from living in New York. It's from living in Australia and the UK prior to coming to New York over the last 20 years. He's spent a long career doing a lot of consulting, especially around change. So we're in the heat of that, and currently he's also the CEO and the founder of Hiring Stage, which I was really excited to talk to him about. So we may have to get him back and spend a lot of time with that once we get back in the hiring mode. But welcome, Mike. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Ira, and thank you, Keith. Really glad to be with you today.
So, Mike, you heard the setup. We're literally bringing exponential change to life. It's interesting. We're watching, my wife and I are watching some shows at night, and I would say there was 3 or 4, maybe 5 shows in the last few days that before the show opened, there was a disclaimer that although these events seem real, they were based on fiction, that the events, again, the events were not real life, and that they were recorded months ago. And they've been anything from a superbug to a terrorist attack to, you name it, disruptions within cities, nothing certainly global, but, very, very interesting. So those are the times we're living in. So can't wait to get your perspective on, on what's going on. And then let's talk a little bit about mindset. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, mindset. Wow, and that is a great place to start. One of the things I do, Ira and Keith, is I run workshops and I speak about particularly how do people really understand their unique value. And it's a key thing I work with. And where it starts is mindset. Because without having the right mindset, when I talk the right mindset, I really talk about, like Carol Dweck talks about, right, the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. A growth mindset says, hey, no matter where we've been, what's happening, we can still choose a path and we can take action towards that path. Whereas a fixed mindset might say, oh no, the events that are happening around me, they're determining my path. I have no choice, or my past has set my future, and I have little to do with that. And I think it's really, really important that we ground ourselves around mindset. And that's also, I use the word ground, is really important to be grounded and to get present. And those of us who practice mindfulness, maybe we practice yoga, maybe we practice meditation, it's all about how can we just ground ourselves for the moment? How can we switch off what's going on around us? Like just give a pause to the social media streams, give a pause to cable news, maybe focus on some true information, some true data, but take a break, get present, and then start to think about, wow, what could I do during this time period? What could I do? How could I use this time period and actually treat it as an opportunity? And this is a really, really key thing. Treat this time as an opportunity, and how can I use it best to position myself for when, as you said right from the very beginning, Ira, is this will change, this will finish, this will end. There will be a cure to this, and we will go back to a normal. Maybe it's a slightly new normal, but it will be a normal. So that's where I'm starting with that.
So, and just I love the reference, Carol Dweck, by the way, if anybody wants to read about that. It's her last name is Dweck. I actually have a whole chapter in my book about that.
Okay.
And we talk about that. But, a few weeks ago, I don't know if are you familiar with Charlene Lee? Her last name is L.I. So,
No.
Charlene Lee. I encourage you to go out, like as they do everybody else. I interviewed her for a live stream, and then she was on the podcast January, I think. She has a new book. It's called The Disruption Mindset. Oh, and okay. You'll like it. You'll love it. I can tell you think like I do. Yeah. It'll take the Carol Dweck's work kind of one step further. It wasn't based on that, but just on how people get stuck. And she talks a lot about, and this is just a great opportunity to do that. She talks a lot about the future customer. And that we should have been doing that before. Not think about what is current, who our current customers are, how we can service them. Obviously, you need to do that. But things were changing so rapidly, not as rapidly as this, but things we knew were changing rapidly, that you really have to start thinking about who are our customers in the future. And going to what you do and I do on a daily basis is companies needed to start thinking about hiring people with the skills that they will need, not that the skills that people had in the past. And, this just sort of threw a boulder into the nice quiet pond, stimulate that. Yeah. So, but you mentioned about treat this time as opportunity. And this is getting old and it's almost becoming a buzzword, so I almost hate to bring it out, but almost every show that I've listened to that talks about things like this is that, the Chinese symbol for crisis also means opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what are some of the opportunities that you're seeing? How are you helping clients sort of reframe, or how are you personally reframing this time?
It's a really good question, and I've been asked a few times around this, and I actually made a posting on LinkedIn about this just recently as well. Is I think one of the things I talk to, particularly about professionals, for example, that are looking to make a career shift, worried about their job during this time period, looking for that new career. How can they use this time? So I say that one of the things that you can do is think about using this time to create. Like maybe create that blog post, maybe start writing that book, maybe start posting on channels where your target market, either your target client or your target employers, may hang out, and talking about this thing which is your unique value proposition, this thing that you're uniquely good at, and start bringing that out and practice that. Because in the day-to-day of working, sometimes we forget to do that or we don't focus on that. So it's really what we call taking a personal branding journey and using this time to create content around that and develop that. And then from that, once you redefine, look, what's this thing that I'm really good at that I could either write about or talk about or comment on or give a workshop on or write an article about, maybe that'll refocus me as I go and look for my next client or my next employer, so I can be a much more specific about what I'm really good at. And I think it's that taking stock that people can really do right now. And I think it also relates to something you just mentioned about, skills for the future versus skills for the past. I have a bit of a different take on that, but it's meeting the same objective I believe you're talking about, Ira, there is that what I encourage people to do is, obviously you have an inventory of skills, but I ask them two questions, and I ask both companies I'm working with, one way, I ask candidates or talent I'm working with. I say, on the talent side, I say, can you articulate clearly what problems you solve in organizations? And
Great question. Great question, by the way.
Yeah,
it's right out of Sales 101, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's actually right, Keith. I actually say, you know what, and this sort of gets to some of the hiring bit we may get to later, is that, and the conversation I had with Keith a bit earlier, Keith, we touched on this, right, is that if we adopt more of a sales process, we're selling ourselves, right? So think about this idea of engaging with I think people who are independent consultants get this better, but people who've been employees less so, is treat this process as a sales process. So really understand what are the key problems that organizations have that you can solve. And then if you focus on key problems you can solve, that'll bring with it the inventory of skills that you need. But it's future-facing, to the point that Ira has mentioned. You're focusing on the problems that companies need to solve, and then you'll bring the skill set to that. But it's really being clear on that. And so you can be clear on that in your communication, in your outreach, in your networking, in your unique value proposition, in your pitch, in your elevator pitch, all those things that can be very, very focused. So I'm suggesting people really focus on that. And on the client side, or the companies that are looking to employ a freelancer talent, is maybe take this time to sit back and say, what do I really need? Like I think I need a chief talent officer, or I need a new chief marketing officer, or I need someone to take over my operations or run my tech, or I need a new hiring person. But think about why you need that. Peel it back, and the question I ask them is, okay, why do you think you need that role? What are the particular issues that you're facing in your company that you think you need that? And focus on that, and make sure that the resource you bring will be able to solve that problem, and not someone who can tell you they can do that role, because maybe there's a skills mismatch there. Focus on the problem. So I match, problem company has to problems I solve and things I'm passionate about. And I think it's a much, much better way to focus. So that's where I see this this whole thing of mindset, unique value proposition, and then taking it forward.
So, Mike,
with you guys.
You know this already. Ira knows this already about me, but for me, the mindset element is really where the challenges are. And I love how you use the word create. I learned how you use the phrase reframe. My concerns go out to the people that are in what we could refer to as survival mode. And we know, for the most part, that if you're in the mindset of survival, you cannot also be in the mindset of create. And I know when I work with executives, I essentially have to allow them to let me into their mind enough so that they could accept that they're worrying about things, and it's that worry that keeps them from recognizing what problems they can solve inside of an organization. And it's amazing to watch the blinders get removed and they get to see things in a different way that enables them to get out of that fixed mindset that you mentioned, out of that past, habitual thought process, and they start to shift the way that they see how they can impact an organization. But those are executives, they're people that might, if they're talking to me, they're looking for a way out of their mind in some way, shape, or form, right? What are you seeing from your perspective, and maybe what's been working when you talk to people about getting out of that survival mindset, calming themselves so that they can then be able to create?
It's a really good question, and I've been working with some people who are adjusting that mode. There's a person I'm working with who is a freelancer and is really up against the wall. They need money coming in, and it's not coming in, and so the tendency or the temptation was to start getting desperate. But I think there's two pieces to it. I think there's obviously a realization, like there may be an emergency job or a way you just need to get money in. So if you're in a situation where you really need to bring funds in the door, then there's nothing wrong. It's not wrong to say, you know what, I've just got to take that job. I know that, or that role, or that whatever it is, that project. I normally wouldn't take that, but I need the money, and that's okay. That's a reality. But I want to separate that from still our mindset. Is I think it's really important not to let that fact, I need to do that, then drive my mindset that's what I'm stuck with now. It's a reality of a stopgap, I need the money. But I think it's also still at the same time useful to sit back and say, wow, what is this thing that I'm really good at? So what is this, my unique value, that I can still not forget about that when this crisis period has passed, I'm going to go back to that and still search for that new piece. And it still brings an abundance mindset, even though I might be working on a job that's just paying the hourly rate that I can get right now because I need that. But I still have an abundance mindset to say that will clear, this will pass. I will move to an area where I know my skills are a better fit, and where I can earn either a higher dollar rate or I can just get more compensation. And I think you can do two. I think you can do both at the same time, and it's actually a healthy thing to do. It's a healthy thing to do, but it's recognizing reality. That's where I feel around that.
Yeah, and we're coming up on a break here, but when we get back, I want to touch on that part right there, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we've had a couple great questions come in too from Beck and Andre, so we're going to get to them. But you are listening to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show. We've got our guest, Mike Smith, and we are talking about reframing COVID-19. What are some opportunities buried within the crisis? What's our future look like? We're going to take a short break. You're going to hear from our sponsors, Zor.ai and Success Performance Solutions. So stay right where you are. We'll be back within 2 minutes.
Imagine how your company would grow if your candidate experience earned a 99% approval rating. Well, to get to 99%, you need the 3 best letters in recruitment technology, XOR. Zor's text bots, chat bots, and audio bots increased IKEA's candidate conversion rate 455%. Zor decreases candidate drop-off rates, improves your candidate experience, and collects analytics for future strategies. To learn more, check out Zor.ai. That's XOR.ai.
Hi everyone, this is Ira Wolf, author of Recruiting in the Age of Googlization. I'm excited to announce that my online course, Recruitment Marketing for the Accidental Recruiter, is open for business. This course is the culmination of a 2-year-long project and releases recruiting tips I've learned after hundreds of hours of research, speaking with thousands of conference attendees, and interviews with dozens of experts. It's all available to you in Recruitment Marketing for the Accidental Recruiter. To receive more information or get started, visit our website at www.successperformancesolutions.com and click on the tab Recruitment Marketing for the Accidental Recruiter.
Hey, welcome back everyone to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show. I'm your host, Ira Wolf. I'm here with Keith Campagna and our guest, Mike Smith. We're talking about mindset, basically how to reframe COVID-19, find some opportunities within crisis. And we had a great first session, a great part of the show, and a couple questions came in. I want to throw one of these out to you guys, and then we can get back to what was on the agenda. Or let me just follow this up, and this may fit under one of those umbrellas. In reframing things, and one of the questions from Andre was, do you have any suggestions on what people can do to make money in this situation? And Mike, you may have some ideas there. I know you were talking about helping people reshape their future on a trip that you were at a few weeks ago. But I was listening to a call yesterday. I was on a call yesterday, and they were sharing case studies of how they've been helping companies, not necessarily only in the last few weeks, but even prior to that. And one of those was a convenience store, basically gas station. Kind of corner stores where you can fill up in gas, and you go in, you buy your lottery tickets and your soda and your milk and some of them still have cigarettes or beer, if they sell that. But it was, how do they reframe it now that there's much less traffic? And it was turn your convenience store into a necessity store. What are the things that people absolutely need? And, instead of worrying about beer, maybe they need Tylenol or cold medication.
Hand sanitizer.
Hand sanitizer, yeah, if they can get a hold of it. Yeah, I want to last one. But, it's little things like that. I thought that was brilliant. I mean, how do you convert a convenience store into a necessity store? And, again, that could fit some careers. So what are some thoughts you have for... there's a lot of people, and Keith was mentioning that right before the break, that are trying to figure out what to do next. How do they get through this?
I think actually that example about the convenience store is absolutely perfect, because you know what, I like the word they went to, need. What did they need? And I think this is the key thing, as we talked about just before the break, is about what do companies need, and then what are you good at that you can provide. So I really see that as a perfect example, that convenience store. He was very smart. He or she was very smart around that.
Yeah, and I'll give credit. That was Daniel Burris again.
Okay. Okay. So I think it's a really good example of how you can do that. But I think even if you are in this mode of saying, you know what, I'm in a bit of crisis mode, I need to get this money in, there will be times when you can still sit back and do that thinking, do that more strategic thinking about what I'm really good at, and devote some time to that. So devote some time to that, to keep on developing that during this time period. So when things go back to normal, you'll be able to pursue that and it perhaps demonstrated you got yourself above the pack. And one of the realities is that maybe others are doing that too during this time period, during this hiatus. So if you're not doing it, you may be behind it a bit when things get back to the new normal. So that's why I still recommend that people adopt this mindset of saying, you know what, I can choose my future, even though it looks like we are so set by COVID-19. It's putting so much demands on us, or so much pressure on us, or so much limitations on us. Don't let that take us away from the fact that we can still make this decision about what we want to do, and we have the ability to make that decision. And I think we talked earlier about getting present. I think the beauty about getting present is it shows us that we can disconnect ourselves from what's going on around us. We can disconnect ourselves from the past. The future doesn't actually exist yet, so therefore we can shape it. If you practice that and practice that disconnection, it helps us believe and understand that we can actually edit our past. We can decode what we know, and we can reshape it, and we can choose to take it in a different path. And I think this time is a perfect time to do some of that reshaping. Start a journal, write these ideas down, write down your goals, write down your actions, and then take some action every day. It may be a small amount, because you're basically doing your hospital pass work. You're basically doing the work that you need to pay the bills. But still devote that time to writing out, what am I uniquely good at? What are my steps I'm going to take? I think it's a really good time.
And go ahead, Keith.
Oh, thanks, dude. So, Mike, I want to flip the coin there a little bit, but it's still the same present moment coin. And, the idea of getting it out of your head, figuring out, and again, I've said this to thousands of people at this point, but go to YouTube, type in, how can I learn to meditate for 1 minute? How can I learn to breathe for 1 minute, right? And what happens is, as we're talking, we're getting some very real world, serious adult questions on our chat line. And to address those questions, maybe you can't figure out a way to make money in this situation. But if you clear your mind, maybe you'll realize that you can reach out to your utility company, your mortgage bank or whatever, and ask them for leeway. So if you can't make money, maybe you could reduce your costs.
Right.
And it's ideas like that really present themselves when you're in the present moment, when you've been able to disconnect and recognize that it might not be right now. It might not be a challenge of making more money. Maybe the challenge is how to reduce your cost. And we are not in a status quo environment. We are not in a everything is fine all over the place kind of mindset as a human family. Everyone is trying to help everyone in some way, shape, or form. So by being able, I can't help but think, by being able to recognize the present moment, you can see different angles that will help relieve the stress once your mind, starts creeping back into the worrisome future or regrets of the past.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And, example myself, like about a week or so ago when I came back from Mexico, and Mexico was where I was, it was in Baja, it was in a bit of a bubble. No virus there. People weren't really taking it that seriously. So it's when I landed back a week and a half ago, I was thrown into this when I was consuming social media and news that I wasn't getting in Mexico. And I started to feel this thing. I started to feel this wave come over me of anxiety and stress. I said, wow, how am I going to cope with this? And so after a while, I had to realize I had to stop. And I said, hold on, I have this technique. So I actually did a technique which I really recommend people do, is just basically, if you're seated, like sit down, ground your feet on the floor, feel grounded, and just sit and breathe. Slow your breath down. Take long breaths in, slow breaths right out, and just control your breathing. And which is really what Get Present is. And it's not about stopping ideas coming in your head. Just if anything comes in, just let it flow in and let it flow back out again. Don't hold it. Just let it flow and just be present. And practice doing that. And it's amazing what can flow from that. So in my case, I realized, I said, wow, I think I should do, my particular thing is I want to start a mastermind group. And that only came to me when I was being present. Before I was thinking about, oh dear, what are my clients going to do? Oh, I got a client that said that they want to delay hiring. Oh, how's it going to affect my cash flow? I actually got present, and I came up with, in the same example, a new idea the new idea for me I hadn't adopted before. So that's an example, I think, of where getting present can really help, and I really recommend we try it.
And for Andre, and again, for anybody who has a question like that, hopefully we can do a future show about that and we can address it. But you contact us, Keith or myself on LinkedIn or Twitter, and send us your questions, and be happy to have a deeper conversation offline. But we had another question too, which I've got it's sort of a sarcastic answer, but I think it's very real. But I'd love to get both your opinions. It was from Beck, and it was, how long do you think it's going to take life to get back to the way it was before all of this? So I'm going to hold my answer until the end, unless one of you takes it.
Wow. Wow. So I'll take a stab. I think it's going to take longer than what we might think. And I think the other thing about it is I think there's going to be a new normal coming out of this. So it won't be exactly the same. There'll be some new opportunities, and there'll be some damage out of it. There'll be some organizations that perhaps won't survive this, and there'll be new organizations. Like one of the things that I've seen is I'm amazed by the number of businesses that have switched to online virtual like within a week. Like they had, And I'm not talking everything from basic businesses like, like one man, but like people who offer guitar lessons, people who do dance, people who do coaching sessions.
Mike, I'm in the midst of an article, and I've got almost and I don't have kids at home, so and I don't have anybody else living with us, but I have a list of about 100 sites that people can go to for just for parents with kids at home,
right?
Of instructing everybody from toddlers all the way up to college students of free learning. Sites that are there for exercising, for yoga, for mindfulness, for art, for tours, for you name it. There's so many things up there. And so I'm absolutely, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think there's just, for people that said we don't know how to get information or we don't know what to do, they change your mindset.
There's a woman I work with this morning, and she does this healing technique where she uses pressure points on the patient to work, and she's worked out a way to do it with a surrogate or to do it on herself. Mm-hmm. And I taught her how to use Zoom. She didn't know how to use Zoom, and now she's doing Zoom classes, and so she can still get some revenue that she thought she was going to lose. She thought she was going to totally lose her business during this time, and she pivoted about like we talked about before and said, no, maybe I can do online, and she's worked out a way. Now, maybe you can't charge exactly the same price for in-person. Right. The doctors I've used have already opened up virtual sessions. You can now have a diagnosis session via video conference. So I think that is something that people are really moved to.
This is probably a whole other conversation, and I think we've danced around it a little bit. But it's unbelievable how many assumptions have been shattered in the last 2 weeks. I mean, it's things we can't do this. And what the other thing I wanted to bring up is I released an article yesterday, and it was called the 5 Timely Tips to Thrive During the Work at Home Experiment. And there were very, very basic things that you needed to do because there's people struggling it. I mean, is at work. I mean, they might have had a laptop or a computer and the family shared it. Now you got 3 people or 4 people at home or more, and people are struggling how to get, online and how do we hook up a monitor so we can see this? And, how do we even get a better cable? So it was pretty basic stuff. But the one thing that struck me when I was writing it was, and I called it the work at home experiment. Can you imagine in a strategy session, and I know, Mike, you've been in these, in a strategy session, let's plan for a pandemic. And within an hour, at the end of today, you're going to send all your employees home, but you have to continue operating business. Mm-hmm. They can't take anything. They can't take their desktops. They have to go home and figure out how to run their business. And it would have been this wild scenario. What's this have to do with our business? This couldn't possibly happen. And the reality is it did. And for the most part, it's working remarkably well, which sort of leads me to the next question to get your opinion on. We're about 2 minutes away from sort of wrapping this up. But what's your viewpoint? And this follows in line with Beck. My view is that a lot of these companies who said you can't work from home because the information's confidential, we need you here, it's teamwork, it's productivity, it's all these things. After 2 or 3 months, a lot of these people aren't coming back. They're not coming back to a 5-day work week and commuting 2 hours a day.
Yeah. I think you're right. Just a quick example, I can remember way back in Australia when they had an airline pilot strike and there was no planes flying for a period of time. That's when video conferencing came up and companies didn't go back. Companies reduced the amount of travel they did and started using video conferencing and conference calls, and that never changed. So I think back to the original thing is there will be a new normal out of this, and are you ready to take advantage of the new normal? That's really the question I would pose for everybody here.
Yeah, and I think that from the hope, to give people hope like Andre and Beck who are asking these questions, and a lot of listeners out there, there's going to be a lot of people, there's going to be a lot of openings. When this rebounds, there's going to be a lot of hiring, and companies are going to say, hey, all clear, show up Monday, 7 o'clock. And there's going to be a lot of people who don't come back to work. There's going to be a lot of people who found other jobs during this era. There's going to be a lot of people that said, we're changing careers, or we're changing lifetimes, or we're going to work for a better employer. Somebody who actually took care of it.
I really like this remote working thing. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities out there if you want to go back to sort of the way it was. A brick and mortar type of job, then do it. But there's going to be a lot of shifting around there. Hey, Mike, we've got just a few minutes left. Again, this conversation could go on forever. I love talking to you. But how can people get a hold of you? What's the best way to reach you? And what's sort of a closing message on mindset and change?
So first of all, the closing message is every single person listening to this has a unique value proposition. No one else in the world has your combination of personal experience, business experience, life experience, professional and work experience. You just need to bring that out and then take it into the world, and you will be amazed at the results. Anyone wants to contact me, best way is my email, Mike, M-I-K-E, @hiringstage, H-I-R-I-N-G, stage, S-T-A-G-E.com.
And real briefly, we didn't even get into this too much. Tell us about Hiring Stage. So 30-second commercial.
Yeah, what Hiring Stage does is we connect growth stage companies, so early stage companies, growth stage companies, to the deeply experienced professionals they need to really improve their success trajectory. That's what we do. And the value prop is that, unfortunately, many growth stage companies don't meet their growth objectives. Even 60% of VC-backed startups don't survive. A key success hack is to bring in deep experience in the right places as advisors, mentors, coaches, employees, consultants. I connect those. I find those and connect them.
Excellent. And whatever on the flip side of this, as I'm calling it, we'll have to get you back and talk a little bit about the hiring, more on the hiring stage and talent acquisition and helping growth companies. So,
yeah, love to.
Appreciate it. So,
Mike, thanks so much, bud.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Keith. Thanks, Ira. I really enjoyed the conversation and the show today.
Absolutely.
Our pleasure.
And
thank you.
Appreciate it. Keith, we did it again. So.
Ira, I kind of want to go back to one of the questions, right? And that is like, how long till this goes back to the way it was? It never goes back to the way it was.
Yeah, that was my answer. So
right?
Yeah, that was my snarky answer. Never. It's not going back to the way it was. It will be anywhere from somewhat different to radically different.
And the key element here, if I'm going to try and make my attempt real quick to put a bow on today's episode, and that is be comfortable in the unknown, because you've always been there. It's always been some sort of false impression that anyone has that they know what's going to happen the next day. And we are currently living in that exact scenario where you'll never be in control. And I think that's going to be another huge paradigm shift that takes place in and outside of the workplaces. Take us away, buddy.
Life will forever be on the exponential curve.
Yeah.
going on out. So, and as I mentioned before, I talk about VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and
ambiguous.
And ambiguous. And the counter argument, not the counter argument, but the antidote to that is for you, which is the uncertainty, is understanding. Take this time to learn, become informed. It doesn't remove the change, but it does make it a little bit more comfortable. So again, everybody who's listening, thanks, Andre Beck and a few others who submitted chats. If we didn't answer your questions, please contact Keith or me on LinkedIn or Twitter, or leave a comment on the Geeks Geezers Googlization website. We can't thank you enough for listening, especially during these times. Hopefully we're offering you some help and solace and not just comfort, but hopefully we're helping you reframe the situation finding some new opportunities that you didn't consider before, and we're going to continue doing that over the next few weeks. And also remember, if you connect with me on LinkedIn or YouTube, subscribe on YouTube or Twitter, you'll be notified when there are live streams coming out. I've got another one coming up Friday with a friend. We're talking about HR mostly, but with Ed Crow. Yesterday we had a great one. We were talking about company culture in the era of working from home. So we have, remember, Googleization Nation, Googleizationnation.com. Join us there. Join us on the Slack channel. Thanks to Zor.ai and Success Performance Solution for helping us be on the air again. And our next show is next Wednesday, 1 p.m., as it is every week. Wednesday, 1 p.m., W4CY.com. For Keith and me and the rest of Googleization Nation, this is Ira Wolf and Keith Campagna. Don't let the shift hit your plan.